The world runs on money. But what happens when that money begins to break? Every nation, every business, every dream, built on one promise: trust the dollar. For 100 years, it ruled like a king. Strong, respected, untouchable. But now, the king is shaking. The debt grows like a storm on the horizon. Prices rise, trust fades, and fear whispers across the markets. One man dares to say it aloud. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He warns, the biggest crash in history is coming. Is he right? Or just another voice lost in the noise? In this dramatic English learning audiobook, you'll follow the story of money, from gold to paper, from Washington to the world, and discover how faith, power, and fear built the modern economy. You'll learn English through real events, through emotion, suspense, and truth. Because this is not just a story about money, it's a story about all of us. And what happens when the dollar, the king of currencies, finally begins to fall. Chapter 1. The Warning Voice. It began with one short message, a tweet, just a few words, but they sounded like thunder. Reminder, it said. The biggest crash in history is coming this year. People stopped scrolling. Some laughed. Some felt a chill deep inside. The man behind the words was Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a millionaire, a teacher, a man who had seen storms before. He didn't shout. His voice was calm, measured, almost gentle. But the message was fire. He warned that the world had built a house of paper. Money printed from nothing. Governments living on loans. People believing the game would never end. He said again, stop saving fake dollars. Buy gold. Buy silver. Buy Bitcoin. Many dismissed him. Others listened. A few remembered that years ago he had predicted the crash of 2008. And he had been right. Still, what exactly was he warning about? Why did his words travel so far? From Tokyo to New York, from rich investors to small families watching the news at night? To understand, we must look at a number so large that even the screens in Washington struggle to hold it. $37.9 trillion. That is the debt of the United States of America. Every second, that number climbs higher. Every breath, more interest adds to the weight. It is a mountain made of promises, and when promises become too heavy, they break. Kiyosaki calls it the debt bubble. He believes it will burst soon, sending shock waves across the planet. He says the dollar, the king of money, has become a prisoner of its own power. For almost a century, the world has trusted that green note. Nations trade with it. Banks hold it. Families save it. But trust, once cracked, never sounds the same again. Some experts call him dramatic. Others call him brave. But none can deny one truth. America owes more than it earns, and the cost grows every day. In an interview, his voice dropped lower. He looked straight into the camera and said, God have mercy on us all. He wasn't acting. He was afraid. He believes schools never teach the truth about money, that people work for cash but never learn how it works. So he keeps warning, wake up. Learn before it's too late. his message spreads again tonight. On screens, on phones, in quiet rooms, some ignore it, some save it. Some move their savings into gold or crypto, because deep down, they feel something too. A pressure building in the system, a silence before the crash. And maybe the real question isn't if he's right, but what happens if he is? Chapter 2. The Mountain of Debt. Every empire carries a weakness. For our time, it is not an army. Not hunger, but debt. Money once symbolized strength. Now it whispers danger. In the heart of Washington, giant numbers flash across digital screens. Trillions of dollars. Not millions. Not billions. Trillions. The United States of America owes more money than any nation in history. $37.9 trillion. The number grows each day, each hour, each heartbeat. If you tried to count it $1 per second, you would need more than 1,000,000 years. People live their normal lives. Shops open, cars move, markets rise and fall. But behind all this movement, the system is trembling. It runs on borrowed money and borrowed time. Robert Kiyosaki calls it a mountain that never stops growing. He says, America is rich, but living on credit. He's not alone. The IMF, the World Bank, even the U.S. Treasury whisper the same worry. They use softer words like fiscal challenge or unsustainable path. But they mean the same thing. The mountain is too high. Imagine a family. They earn $5,000 a month, but they spend $7,000. To survive, they borrow $2,000, again and again. At first, nothing bad happens. They eat, they pay bills, they sleep. But after a while, the interest grows faster than their income. Soon, they borrow money just to pay old loans. That's how collapse begins. Quietly. The U.S. now pays over $1.2 trillion every year, just for the interest on its debt. Not to build schools, not to help families, just to stay alive. It's like paying rent for the past. That single payment is bigger than the entire military budget of almost every other nation on Earth. It's money burned in silence. Where does the money come from? Some from American banks and investors. The rest from abroad. China, Japan, the Gulf countries, Europe. If one day they lose trust and stop lending, the system begins to shake. Because money works on faith, and faith is fragile. This is what Kiyosaki fears most. A chain reaction. He calls it the domino effect of debt. One bank fails, then another, then the currency itself. In 2008, people said, "Impossible." Then it happened. Now, he warns it could happen again. Only bigger. Others say, no. America can never fail. They believe the government can simply print more money. But printing is like adding water to soup. It feeds no one. It only makes the taste weaker. More money means more inflation. More inflation means less power for every dollar. Kiyosaki calls it poison disguised as help. He explains it simply. Debt is not free. It's a promise, and promises must be paid. That line echoes around the world. Because everyone understands promises. Everyone knows what it feels like to owe something. And when a nation owes more than it can ever repay, the world begins to worry. Late at night, Kiyosaki posts again. His message glows on millions of screens. The bubble will burst, he writes. Maybe soon. Maybe tomorrow, but it will burst. Some ignore him. Some move their money. Some just stare at the numbers. The mountain that never stops growing. The silence feels heavy. The question grows louder. If the biggest borrower in the world falls, what happens to everyone else? Chapter 3. The Dollar. King or Prisoner? For almost 100 years, the U.S. dollar ruled the world. It wasn't only paper. It was power. It decided who could trade, who could borrow, and who could dream. Ships carried it across oceans. Banks locked it inside steel vaults. People everywhere whispered the same belief. As long as we have dollars, we are safe. But now, the whispers sound different. Too much printing, too much control, too much debt. Some nations no longer want to bow before the Green King. China, Russia, Brazil, they speak of a new world, a world where trade can live without the dollar. The word they use is de-dollarization. It's long, quiet, almost harmless. But it shakes the ground under global finance. Robert Kiyosaki watches all this and sighs. He says, "The dollar was strong because people believed in it. When belief dies, the dollar dies. Belief, that's the secret. Because today's money isn't gold or silver. It's trust. It's the idea that tomorrow the same paper will still buy bread." Let's go back in time. In 1944, after the Second World War, leaders from around the globe met at a place called Bretton Woods. They chose the U.S. dollar to be the center of the world economy. Why? Because America had the gold. Each dollar could be exchanged for real gold held in Fort Knox. It was solid. It was honest. Then came 1971. President Richard Nixon looked at the growing debt and made a choice. He cut the tie between gold and the dollar. From that moment, the dollar stood alone. No gold behind it. Only promises. At first, it worked. Trade exploded. Technology grew. The dollar became stronger than ever. But with time, the promise grew heavy. To protect its power, the U.S. printed more. Wars, bailouts, crises, all paid by the same invisible ink. And trust, once pure, began to fade. Today, some central banks quietly sell U.S. bonds. They buy gold instead. Others build digital payment systems in their own currencies. The world is changing. Slowly. But it is changing. The king still wears his crown, yet the throne shakes beneath him. Kiyosaki says, "The dollar became a prisoner of its own strength." He believes the system depends too much on one currency. If that currency falls, everything connected to it collapses. When America raises its interest rates, people in Africa, Asia, and South America pay the price. Their currencies fall. Their food becomes expensive. Jobs disappear. A choice in Washington can create hunger in another hemisphere. Economists call the dollar the global reserve currency. It means the world keeps it as backup treasure. But even treasure can become a chain. Some experts warn, too much power in one hand is dangerous. Kiyosaki nods and says, "Not forever. Nothing lasts forever. Still, there is another side. Many believe the dollar will survive again, as it always has. It survived wars, recessions, and pandemics. Every time people lost faith, it came back stronger. So who is right? The believers or the doubters? Maybe both. Maybe the truth sits somewhere in the middle between fear and faith. In one podcast, Kiyosaki's voice grew quiet. "I love my country," he said, "but I don't trust its money anymore." His co-host asked gently, "So what do we do?" Kiyosaki smiled and answered, "Learn. Prepare. Don't wait for rescue. Build your own freedom." The words hung in the air, heavy and honest. Because when the king of money begins to tremble, everyone must learn to stand on their own feet. Chapter 4. The Golden Alarm. Gold has no voice, but in times of fear, it speaks louder than any man. When paper money burns, gold shines. When promises break, gold stays still. For thousands of years, when empires fell, people ran to it. Small, heavy, silent pieces of safety. Robert Kiyosaki calls gold God's money. He repeats it often. He says, "You can't print gold. You can't fake it. It's real. It's truth. And in his eyes, truth is what the world has lost." He watches governments print money from nothing, trillions added in seconds. He shakes his head and says quietly, "This is not wealth. This is a lie." To understand why he trusts gold, we must look back through history. When paper collapses, gold rises. In 1929, the Great Depression destroyed banks. But gold kept its value. In 2008, when markets crashed again, those who owned gold slept better than those who owned stocks. And in 2020, when COVID froze the world, gold hit record highs. Every crisis tells the same story. Fear up, gold up. Still, Kiyosaki doesn't worship metal. He sees it as a teacher. Gold reminds people that value must be earned, not printed. He once said, "I don't buy gold because I love metal. I buy it because I don't trust the people who print money." A simple line dash, but sharp as a knife. Of course, gold has limits. You can't eat it. You can't use it to buy bread at the store. It can be stolen. Its price goes up and down. But Kiyosaki doesn't care. He says it's better to hold something real that moves slowly than to hold something fake that disappears fast. He believes gold is not just an investment. It's an education. It teaches patience. It teaches reality. In recent years, a new gold appeared. Digital gold. Bitcoin. Young investors call it Freedom 2.0. It doesn't come from mines, but from minds, a currency born from code. Kiyosaki supports it. He calls it the people's money. He believes technology can do what banks no longer can. Protect value without lies. Still, he keeps his balance. Don't bet everything on Bitcoin, he says. Have some gold, some silver, and some knowledge. Then he smiles. Knowledge is the real gold. Why does this message feel so powerful today? Because people are losing trust. Not just in governments, but in the whole idea of money. They want something solid, something old, something that doesn't change when a politician speaks. And when that desire grows, the golden alarm rings. In cities and villages from London to Lagos, people buy small coins, tiny bars, anything that feels real in their hands. They don't say it out loud, but deep inside, they know. Paper is paper. Gold is forever. Kiyosaki ends one of his interviews with a quiet smile. He says, "Gold doesn't lie. People do." Then he adds, "When you don't trust the system, you must build your own." Outside, the markets glow green for another day. The screens still flash numbers. The world still trades. But somewhere in the noise, the alarm keeps ringing. Soft, golden, and ancient. Chapter 5. From Washington to the World. In the heart of Washington, D.C., there is a building with tall marble columns. Inside, a group of people meets around a long table. They speak softly, but their words move the world. That building is the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. Its decisions touch every pocket, every country, every dream. When the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, money becomes cheap. People buy houses, companies expand, markets celebrate. When it raises rates, everything changes. Loans grow heavy. Jobs disappear. Prices fall. It's a small change on paper, but it decides who wins and who loses. Robert Kiyosaki calls the Federal Reserve the most powerful and dangerous bank on earth. He says it prints money like rain, then suddenly dries the sky. He believes the system has turned into a game, one where ordinary people never truly win. For learners of English, the interest rate is simply the price of money. When it's low, borrowing feels easy. When it's high, life becomes harder. In 2023 and 2024, the Fed began raising rates to fight inflation. It worked for a while. But every rise sent shock waves through the world. A farmer in Africa paid double for fertilizer. A student in India saw her loan payment grow. A family in Europe lost their home. All because of a choice made by a few people in one room in Washington. Kiyosaki's voice trembled with frustration. "This is not freedom," he said. "This is control." He believes the global economy is a giant web tied to the dollar dash dash, and the dollar is tied to the Federal Reserve. When the Fed moves, the whole web shakes. But others defend the system. They say, the dollar brings stability. Without it, trade would collapse. Maybe they're right. The world still needs a common anchor. And for now, that anchor is green and American. Still, every anchor can rust. In 2025, America spent more than $1.2 trillion just paying the interest on its debt. That's more than education, more than health care, more than building new roads. It's like paying rent on the past, while the future waits outside the door. Economists warn that if this continues, the U.S. will face hard choices, raise taxes, cut spending, or print even more money. Each option hurts. Each one shakes the faith of other nations that depend on the dollar. History whispers a warning. Rome had armies. Britain had ships. America has dollars and data. Every empire believes it will last forever, until one day it doesn't. Kiyosaki says softly, "Debt is our weapon and our curse." But he's not only a prophet of doom. He also speaks of hope. a chance for people to learn, to act, to prepare. He says, you can't control Washington, but you can control yourself. You can build your own freedom. One skill, one decision, one coin at a time. Outside, the city hums. Cars pass the monuments. Tourists take pictures. No one sees the invisible waves spreading from the Fed to the farthest villages on Earth. And somewhere on a quiet screen glowing in the night, Robert Kiyosaki types another warning. Chapter 6: When the World Stops Trusting. Trust. It's invisible, but it holds the world together. When people trust money, they trade. When they stop, everything freezes. The modern world is built on that one fragile thing. Faith. Faith that the bank will open tomorrow. Faith that the number on the screen means something real. Robert Kiyosaki says, money is only as strong as belief. He warns that belief is breaking. He sees governments printing more, promising more, borrowing more. Each promise sounds comforting, but everyone weakens the foundation a little more. He calls it the silent collapse. All around the world, signs of doubt are appearing. China and Russia trade in their own currencies. India buys oil without using the dollar. Central banks in Asia and Africa fill their vaults with gold instead of U.S. bonds. These aren't revolutions with flags and crowds. They are quiet exits, nations walking away from the system, without saying goodbye. For decades, the world trusted the dollar, like a steady heartbeat. Now the rhythm feels uncertain. The pulse slows. Kiyosaki's voice grows heavier when he says, the moment trust dies, money dies with it. Imagine waking up one morning. Your phone still glows. The bank app still opens. But suddenly, people stop believing the numbers mean anything. Shops close, markets panic. Governments speak. But no one listens. It sounds impossible until history reminds us that it has happened before. Germany in the 1920s, Zimbabwe in the 2000s. Argentina more than once. Different countries, same story. Too much debt. Too much printing. Not enough trust. But Kiyosaki doesn't only blame America. He says it's a global habit, a disease of easy money. We all live on credit, he explains. Countries, companies, families. We think debt is normal. We forgot it's dangerous. He pauses and adds, when the lies grow too heavy, the truth always comes back. Economists use polite words, adjustment, correction, reset. But for ordinary people, it means something simple. Prices jump, jobs vanish, savings disappear. That's how the loss of trust feels. Not as a headline, but as hunger, as fear, as silence. Still, Kiyosaki believes there's a way out. He says knowledge is protection. Learn how money works, own real assets, build skills that no crisis can erase. He says, if the system falls, you must be your own system. All across the internet, his words travel. Some people mock him, some quietly prepare. Some begin to understand that trust isn't a government gift. It's a personal choice. Because when the world stops trusting, only the wise stand firm. At night, the city lights of New York shine over Wall Street. Traders celebrate another day of profits. But far away, a farmer in Africa, a teacher in India, a student in Portugal. They all feel the same invisible tremor. The system still stands, but its faith is shaking. The world may not fall tomorrow, maybe not this year, but as Kiyosaki says, the cracks are already there. He looks at the camera and finishes softly. Once trust is gone, no power can bring it back. Chapter 7. Kiyosaki against the world. He stands alone now. Robert Kiyosaki, the man who refuses to stay silent. For years, he's been the voice shouting in the storm. The crash is coming, he says again and again. But the louder he speaks, the more the world tries not to hear. Television hosts smile politely. Economists roll their eyes. Bankers laugh behind glass walls. They call him dramatic, negative, even dangerous. They say, fear doesn't build the future. Kiyosaki only smiles. He's heard it all before. In 2007, he warned about the housing bubble. People mocked him. Then 2008 arrived. The laughter stopped. He remembers those days clearly. He says, "When you tell the truth early, people hate you for it. But when it happens, they call you lucky." He shakes his head slowly. "I wasn't lucky. I was paying attention." Now he warns again. This time about the biggest bubble of all. The debt bubble, the trust bubble, the system itself. But this time, the critics are louder too. Famous investors, TV economists, central bankers, they all argue that he's exaggerating. The U.S. economy is strong, they say. The dollar will recover. Technology will save us. Maybe they're right. Maybe not. Kiyosaki answers calmly, "I hope you're right." But hope is not a strategy. He speaks not with anger, but with deep frustration. He believes the media protects the system, that it tells people what they want to hear. Good news sells better, he says, but lies cost more. He looks into the camera, his voice steady. They say I spread fear, but fear wakes you up. Comfort puts you to sleep. Still, he isn't only talking about numbers. He talks about education, about the system that trains people to obey instead of think. Schools teach you how to work for money, he says, but never how money works for you. That's why he created Rich Dad, Poor Dad, to change how people see wealth. Not as luck, not as privilege, but as knowledge. For him, this fight is personal. He remembers being young and poor, watching his real father, the poor dad, struggle despite education. Then meeting his mentor, his rich dad, who taught him the hidden rules of the game. Now, he teaches those same lessons to millions. But not everyone wants to learn. Some prefer the illusion, the comfort of thinking the government will fix everything. He warns them gently, no one is coming to save you. Not the bank, not the president, not even the Fed. You have to save yourself. Critics write long articles calling him a prophet of fear. Fans call him a teacher of truth. He says he's neither. I'm just a messenger, he explains. If you don't like the message, change your reality. In a conference hall filled with bright lights and cameras, he stands on stage holding a small gold coin. This, he says, is what honesty looks like. He raises it to the crowd, not because it shines, but because it never lies. The audience goes silent. He lowers his voice. Your future is not in banks. It's in your hands. Outside, journalists write headlines. Some mock him, some quote him, but everyone listens. Because whether they agree or not, they all know one truth. If he's right again, the world will never be the same. And so, Robert Kiyosaki continues his lonely fight. Against denial, against arrogance, against time itself. He doesn't promise comfort. He offers warning, because sometimes the man who sounds crazy today is the one history calls wise tomorrow. Chapter 8. Lessons from the Past. History speaks softly, but it never lies. Every great collapse begins the same way, with pride, with blindness, with the feeling that this time is different. Robert Kiyosaki knows that story too well. He studies the past not to fear it, but to understand how the same mistakes keep returning. Only dressed in new clothes. In 1929, the stock market danced like a festival. Everyone was rich on paper. Then, one October morning, the music stopped. Banks closed their doors. Families lost everything. It was called the Great Depression. The lesson was simple. When greed grows faster than reality, reality always wins. Decades later, it happened again. In 2008, the world believed in the dream of easy credit, big houses, cheap loans, promises of endless growth. Kiyosaki warned, "This is fake wealth. It will fall." Few listened. Then the crash came. Banks fell. Homes vanished. The world froze. He remembers watching the news, people crying outside their empty houses. He whispered to himself, "They never taught us this in school." And now, he fears the same movie is playing again. Only bigger, not just housing, not just banks, but the system itself. He says, every generation forgets the pain of the last one. That's why history keeps repeating. He calls it financial amnesia. People forget how dangerous comfort can be. They trust too much. They borrow too much. They wake up too late. But history doesn't only offer warnings, it also offers wisdom. Kiyosaki points to those who survived the storms, the ones who learned, adapted, prepared. He tells the story of his rich dad. During the oil crisis in the 1970s, while everyone panicked, his rich dad bought real assets, property, gold, and small businesses. When others lost money, he gained freedom. That's what Kiyosaki teaches now. We can't control the economy, but we can control our minds. He uses one of his favorite phrases, financial intelligence. It means seeing what's coming before it hits. It means asking questions when others stay silent. It means building something that can survive any storm. He says, if you understand history, you can predict the future because it's the same pattern with different names. For English learners, here's the simple meaning of his message. Don't just work for money. Make money work for you. It sounds small, but it changes everything. Because when a crisis comes, workers wait for help, but investors, they move, they adapt, they survive. Kiyosaki reminds his audience, every crash transfers wealth from the unprepared to the prepared. He doesn't say it with joy. He says it like a warning. those who learn history win quietly. Those who ignore it lose loudly. In his seminars, he often shows a chart of gold, silver, and debt. Then he draws a line upward, a wave that never stops rising. This, he says, is human behavior. We repeat the same mistakes: greed, fear, denial. The crowd watches in silence. Then he adds, "But you can break the cycle." All it takes is awareness. Outside the hall, the world rushes forward. New apps, new markets, new distractions. But inside his lessons, the voice of history whispers again, "Remember, learn, prepare." Because the past is not gone. It's waiting. It watches those who forget. And as Kiyosaki often says, the past doesn't punish. It just repeats itself until you listen. Chapter 9. The Road to Survival. Every story about collapse ends with the same question: who survives? Robert Kiyosaki never claims to know the future. He only says this: those who prepare survive. Those who wait suffer. The road to survival, he says, doesn't begin with money. It begins with mindset. He leans forward in interviews, his eyes sharp, his voice calm. You must think differently, he says. If everyone is running east, stop and look west. He explains that survival in a financial storm is not about hiding. It's about understanding. First, learn how money moves. Learn how debt grows. Learn how governments print, spend, and borrow. Then protect yourself. Not by fear, but by knowledge. He tells people to start small. Buy silver if you can't afford gold. Read one page of a finance book every day. Build skills that no crisis can destroy. He smiles gently. Because when money disappears, skills feed you. For him, wealth is not how much you have. It's how much you know. He says, cash will vanish. Knowledge stays. It's the same lesson he learned from his rich dad decades ago. The poor work for money. The rich make money work for them. Still, he doesn't preach greed. He teaches balance. Don't chase millions, he says. Chase freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from ignorance. Freedom from the system that keeps people asleep. He often tells his audience to imagine 3 baskets: one for security, money that keeps you safe; one for growth, money that works for you; and one for education, money you spend to learn more. He taps the table and says, most people fill only the first basket. That's why they never escape the system. But the road to survival isn't only about finance. It's also emotional. He says, don't let panic control you. Crashes are painful, but they are also opportunities. He looks around the room and adds, when the system falls, the brave build the next one. In his latest book, he writes a line that feels like a prayer. Prepare not because you fear the end, but because you believe in tomorrow. He wants people to hope, but hope with action. To believe, but believe with eyes open. He says, the old world is shaking. The new one will belong to the prepared. All over the planet, his message reaches classrooms, offices, and homes. Some people buy gold. Some start side businesses. Some simply start learning. Each small step becomes a shield. Each lesson becomes light in the dark. Because the true road to survival is not running away. It's walking forward with awareness. As the final pages of his talk close, Kiyosaki smiles. His voice softens. "This isn't the end," he says. "It's a reset. Every collapse creates a new beginning. The question is ... Will you be ready?" Outside, the city lights flicker on skyscrapers built with borrowed money. The air hums with traffic, trade, and trust. The system still stands, for now. But beneath it all, millions of quiet thinkers begin their own journey. Learning, saving, preparing. They walk the same road he described, the road to survival.